Hi, and welcome back to Tough Talk with me, Faustina Anyanwu on C.Hub magazine. Today, my guest is a gubernatorial candidate for Imo State in Nigeria, and his name is Chief Dr. Uwazie, for the ADP party. Dr. Uwazie holds a diploma in computer science, BA Business Administration from Fordham University, New York, and he has also a master's degree of computer and decision science from famed Pratt Institute, New York. He's a PhD candidate at University of Southern Africa. Dr. Uwazie also is retired from IBM to found Net Solutions in Nigeria after a career spanning for over 16 years with IBM. He served first as advisory engineer for IBM in the US, subsequently as an IBM Regional Director for East Africa, then West Africa, and Director for Africa. Now he is retired from IT, with IBM where he works, but now he's coming home to for the post of the governorship of Imo State. And the essence of this conversation today is, as you know, we are searching for the best leader for our nations of Africa so that we can begin to make a change. So, Dr. Steve Uwazie, you're welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, sir. As you have heard from what I said from the introduction, so the essence of this is to find, we are looking for the best leaders for Africa in general and for Nigeria. Now, you're coming for the governorship of Imo State, which is one of the states in Nigeria for 2019. Now, one of the things, and we know that the incumbent governor has his own candidates and stuff like that. So for you coming up, wanting to come and take that post for governorship of Imo State, what are the three major things that you think that this present government has failed the Imo State people on?
The present government, well, they've done their best from my point of view, but you have to understand that Imo State currently is going through a very high youth unemployment. Pensioners are not well paid on time, and therefore there's so much hunger and poverty in the state. So for me, those are the areas we are going to look at to make sure we change and turn things around.
Yeah, but which areas has the present government, the leader, what areas have you identified that they've failed?
Well, there are some the key areas. I could go on and on, but let's talk about let me pick about 3-4 major areas. One is in education. Imo State was known for education, but today, if you look at our educational system, it's been run down, and we are producing very poor people out of schools. That's one area for me the government has failed. Look at the health area. They've attempted to create primary health situation, but everybody in the state can tell you people are just dying because there are no good health facilities. Then we can talk about, as I said, employment, labor area. There are so much unemployment in the state. A whole lot of youth running around, roaming around with nowhere to go or work to do. And then, of course, Imo State is primarily a civil service state. And therefore, people work all their life serving the state. And when they retire, they expect their pension to help them in their old age. They can tell you that owing the pensioners, a whole lot of people are dying because they have not received their pension. So those are some key 4 areas.
Okay, I'm very glad that you mentioned education because personally, we've found out that there are so many shambles of projects going on within the education system in the state. Now, what exactly do you want to do to begin to fix this educational gap that is happening?
Okay, first of all is one, the current government claim that they give free education, but when you go into it, you will find out that it's not actually free. They still task these poor people so much money for different funny things they do in the state. When we say we're going to give free education at least up to the secondary school level, every citizen of Imo State, based on my understanding and finding, and the kind of money we generate in this state, should have an education. So based on that, we are going to make sure we extend that education to all segments of the society in Imo State. And then we are going to bring in good experts who will look at the curriculums and strengthen the curriculum of our educational system. And so that people will come out of school either tearing to the technical side or going on the commercial side where they can go to tertiary schools eventually, okay? And then we're also going to look at how we can create skill-based education, which has died in the state. Because today, everybody doesn't have to be a lawyer, a doctor as they go along. Some people can pick up good skills and certifications that can give them jobs today. And so these are the things we'll do. And then we intend to do what we've seen them do in Anambra State. I believe in copying what works. We look at partnering with the missionaries. You know, when the government came into Imo State, they took back all the schools and ran those schools down. It is our finding that the missionaries run some of these schools, especially on the elementary level and secondary level, a whole lot better than the government. We may invite them back to partner with us to take back some of the schools.
I was going to come to that because this present government, as I understand, you know, they did something like that, saying they were giving back schools that were originally for faiths, like churches and missionaries, back to the mission. And I see that that has been a failed, you know, project. Do you still want to go back to that?
Yes, because if it fell, it is because they don't understand how to execute it. Remember that you could have a good idea. It's not always about the idea, it's about the execution. I understand what is involved. What I'm saying is the government should create an enabling environment. The government should bring the funds that belong to these schools, because there is the universal basic education that funds schools and schools. However, management of the fund is better done by these private missionaries, and they get better results. And as I said, go to Anambra State. Anambra is #1 today in WAEC, all the whole country. And that is what Governor Peter Obi did when he was the governor. And I'm saying it has worked. So if Imo State did it and then it didn't work, it's because they did not execute it well.
Okay, now there are schools, you know, that in the past 5-6 years that have been closed, secondary schools that have been closed. In fact, in Imbise, we have the Obogel Secondary School, that's former Regina Cheli, has been closed, and that used to be one of the best, you know, girls schools in Imbise. And this particular school is I'm passionate about that school because that's my alma mater. And I want to understand, any leader that is coming back to Imo State, what are you going to do to make sure that those schools that we had are reinstated and made to come back into function?
Well, in line with what I'm saying, it is very primary in my project or my goals for the state, if I become the governor, to bring in educationists, experts who will look at the whole state holistically. It's not something you do in silos. We have to look at, take a population census of the schools in the state, look at the circumstances, why any of them is closed, or those that are running, why is it not well run? Is it because it was taken from the missionaries? Like myself, I went to a secondary school called Paternoster in Equarazo. That was a missionary school, and I know I got a good education from there. That was where I was formed and where I found my foundation before I moved on. So we will bring in experts. My job as a leader is, I know that education is fundamental. So I will get the experts who will look at it holistically and understand all these schools, where they are, the state they are, the conditions they are, and then we allocate, you know, the resources, the right resources, and the right combination. Is it to take it completely for as government, or do we give it back if it had originally belonged originally, if I'm not mistaken, was a missionary school? I think, I'm not 100% sure, but
yeah, it was,
what I'm saying, what I'm saying is we will look at the ones that belong to the Catholic schools, the Catholic missions, the Anglican missions, and so on and so forth, the Baptist, and we have a good dialogue with them and see their interest in coming back into these schools. And then we give them the right backing and the right funding. It is not like when we say we give it to the missionary, we will leave them alone. The state will still be involved. But what we're talking about is about ability to rearrange those schools and run them properly with the right curriculums, the right value system, so that we train proper kids that will come out to become great leaders tomorrow.
Okay, talking about curriculum now, there's been a lot of debate on the, around the issue of the history of Africa and Nigeria in particular, in pertaining to like things about slavery, things about the identity, our identity as a people. For a long time, you can find that our educational curriculum has been centered around what the colonialists left for, for the country. So is it possible, do you see a way where Imo State can have a curriculum that represents the identity of the people, that teaches the people who they are, their foundation and the things that, is this something you're able to do?
Of course, that is what I was basically saying when I said, for instance, my mom was a teacher, a retired teacher today, but today lives in the US. I know that there are people who are passionate about education, who are proper educationists, not just somebody being a teacher, but educationists who will look at the curriculum, the program, how it shapes up these kids, where the mission is, the long-term goal. Of course, there will be the ones that we give out technical background. There will also be the cultural aspect. Who are we? For instance, you can see that we as a people within the Nigerian context where we are the Igbos, we're beginning to lose our language. Some of these things will be brought back into the curriculums so that we get a properly formed children that will grow up to be leaders, like I said. And part of that will be the value system and the cultural system that will be part of this curriculum, as well as proper, other areas of education that they need eventually before they spread out to where they will specialize as they move on in Latin, over the chain.
Okay, at the moment, there's not, we can't find any single library in Imo State. How do you react to that?
Well, of course, those are the same things I started with when you asked me, where would I say the government of today has failed? So you were beginning to name it. That is true, that there are no libraries. Of course, you remember when you introduced me, my background is technology. Of course, the old library, the way we knew them, where you have books in racks, that is gradually fading away. We will introduce electronic, what you call electronic, library, where people can actually go on the system and, pick up a book they want to read, download them or do whatever. Yes, of course, it is very critical to expose our children to all the materials and tools they need to grow themselves and enhance themselves. So the library area is thing we'll be looking at to make sure we have them, if not in all schools, but at least in major centers across the local governments of the state.
Now, talking about electronic libraries, now electricity, is one of the things. In fact, electricity, internet, and the major things that are required for that to work. And as we know it now, I don't know how many percentage of people have access to electricity in Imo State.
Well, a very great percentage have access to the national grid. The argument, it's rather how many times or what is the percent of the time that they have light supplied, because you have to understand that the power sector of the country is on the federal level. However, our government, if we become the governor, we intend to do what we call PPP projects, private-public partnership. And we will also go in partnership with some private sectors and also federal government to make sure energy is well circulated into the state. But that is something some of the experts will look at, because I live in Lagos currently since I came back, and I know that in Lagos State, even though electricity is still a federal charter, Lagos State, knowing how important power is, put extra energy into that area to enhance the level of energy and power that comes into Lagos, because it is critical for the survival of the state. So yes, we intend to also make that a priority area for our government.
When the former, you know, in fact, one of the, when you talk of the history of Imo State, as I know it, you know, you cannot talk of, you know, from the time I can remember, you can't talk of Imo State without talking about Mbakwe, who was, you know, the legendary governor of Imo State. During his time, he built the Amaraku Center, which gave, even in the 80s, that people had electricity. Even, you know, I'm just hearing now from you that it's a national federal government that, you know, controls the electricity. But during his time, there was better electricity, you know, supply to people, including water as well. So, are you going to revamp? Is there anything in the pipeline to revamp the Amaraku or to build something similar?
Now, what I was basically saying when I said the PPP projects, private partnership, public partnership, is yes, we will invite the big corporations whose business is generation and distribution to come into partnership with us in Imo State. But having said that, it may not necessarily mean, of course, we will look at our old assets, which is like Amaraku you're seeing. If it is an old asset sitting there getting wasted, I don't know exactly what is the condition today, but the experts, they will analyze it. And these partners may choose to buy into that and to revamp that. But beyond that, remember that technology and time has moved forward. For instance, where I am speaking to you right now, the house I'm staying in, which belongs to a friend of mine who is a leader in our party, Action Democratic Party, he came back from Michigan. He has no public energy system in his house because he knows what it means. He's powering the whole house with solar. So what I'm saying is we will look at some of these other alternative energy sources with some of the experts all over the world, because that's what I bring to the table, because I have a whole lot of international connection, because I grew up from the United States from 1975, and I've moved around the world, and I'm talking to some people already in South Korea who are manufacturing solar. We are already discussing some of these things. We may bring that manufacturing into the state also to bring the cost of solar energy, because that's the only problem we have with it today, to make it slightly cheaper and more accessible. So we will come up with some of this creative alternative energy. There's solar, there's wind turbine, because we cannot keep on waiting for the federal government to do their turbine energy, which is what they do today, gas turbines. And we are still waiting for the federal. We will continue to wait for them to do their bit. But we as a state, we are determined that we are going to make the state as self-sufficient as possible, because we are not going to wait for the rest of the people if they don't want to move. We want to make Imo State a very comfortable and viable state.
I'm glad that you mentioned the solar energy stuff, because I wanted us to be mentioning these things, because people are really interested to find out that, you know, anybody that is coming in is current with the things that are developing in the world now. And solar energy is one of them. And we have the hydro energy as well. And recently, I think somewhere in Igbo land, I'm not sure of the state now, somebody developed a hydro kind of energy, you know, locally, that is powering the village. So I want to know, if you come in as the governor of Imo State, how are you going to empower the youths to be self-sufficient, especially the talented ones, both in technology in other areas? How are you going to empower these youths away from education, formal education, those who are no longer in formal education? How do you plan to empower them so that they can begin to produce some of this? Like you mentioned now, you're speaking with people from Asia and stuff. Now, but we have a lot of talent down in our own land who all they need is empowerment and partnering with the government for them to be able to provide the same services that we're looking for outside.
Yes, you are correct. That is an area we've looked at very carefully and very thoughtfully. Now, I've moved around the state. If you move around the state, you will notice that there's a whole lot of what they call acquisition centers that were attracted by the senators, by the House of Representatives, because they have what they call constituency funding. And some of this funding, some of them came up with creative ideas to build up skill centers. However, the execution of all these centers have been very poorly done. So you will see all these skill acquisition centers across the whole state. Our village where we are in, Senator Chris Anyang, our former senator, even built one in St. Patrick's Old School, but it's not functioning. I have taken stock of that, and at the back of my head, some of these partnerships, because they are well thought out, like what I've told you about us partnering with solar companies to manufacture even the panels and all some components in the state, and at the same time deploy those things. How it works, it is not that you will also agree with these companies that you will train what we call, train the people and skill them up. So what we will do is some of these skill centers across the state, we will assign them as what we give to these people as what government is bringing to the table, and say to these manufacturers or the implementers or the distributors, depending on what technology or what project or what manufacturing we're talking about, part of the understanding ab initio is that they will train our youths in specific skilled areas. And those that show good training and get certificated will then be redeployed with the companies. So in that way, we're creating jobs. We are giving skills to these youths of ours, which they then use to help also grow these projects in the state. And so everybody wins. It's a win-win scenario. That's exactly what we are planning to do.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. One of the other things that you mentioned, that where you think the government has failed, and you're going to focus on is health, which is true. Now, in Imo State, both the general hospitals, the local government, and even in the municipal, even the Federal Medical Center, the Imo State General Hospital, or General Hospital, all these hospitals are just no longer functioning effectively. So what are you going to do? How are you going to, react to it? How the health system in Imo State, there is none at all functioning.
Yes, you are correct. Remember when I spoke earlier, when I marshaled out the key areas, health was one major area. You will agree with me that if you don't have a healthy society, that society is doomed. So it's not an area you play with. From day one of our government, if we come in, we will tackle that area. Now, the current government had a good idea when they talked about primary health care. And they went about to attempt to build one primary health center per local government. So you have 27 of them in the 27 local governments of Imo State.
Can I interrupt you? Can I interrupt you?
Excuse me?
Can I interrupt?
Okay.
You? Yeah, you said this present government, they talked about building primary health centers. Now, this is where I get confused with this government, because primary care system has been in existence long ago. Myself, I'm a nurse midwife. I trained in Federal Medical Center and the Federal Medical Center Umaya, and I worked more than 6 years in Nigeria before coming here. So I know that we have always had primary health centers in so many places. And these are the shambles that are happening in the Imo State now. They come up with something that is already existing, rebrand it, and they'll close old ones and start new ones. Now, it's not a new thing in Imo State that there are primary health centers. So what I'm after now is to find how do you make sure that these things are functioning? How do you empower the medical personnel, the nurses, doctors? How do you make sure that these things are really functioning and not just sound bites?
Yes. Thank you very much. I agree with you that these things are not new. What is new is probably what I'm saying how to implement it and execute it to work the way it's supposed to work to the better benefit of the citizens of Imo State. What I'm saying, or what I was alluding to earlier, was that the current government went and now built brand new built edifice as that they are rolling out primary healthcare center. Let's for a moment say, okay, it's a good idea. I wouldn't say it was a bad idea. But you and I know that if you don't implement these things well, they become what we call elephant projects. So we have these 27 buildings scattered, one in each local government with nothing. All of them are carcass. We immediately moved. I just told you that after this interview, I'm rushing down to meet with MBC USA medical team. They are here to give free medical just as their own giving back to the country. These are all Imo citizens of MBC extraction all over United States. They have an organization called MBC USA. So what I'm saying, so that I don't take too much time, is we know that we have good nurses. You are one of them. You have already told me now. But my sister is the treasurer for the MBC USA. She's a nurse, Bibi. She trained in Umuahia, worked in Owerri FMC before she moved to the United States. I know the level she's operating. We have a lot of experts in the healthcare area who are Imo citizens or even Nigerian citizens. They don't all have to be Imo citizens, but even Imo by itself has a whole lot of them, from nurses to pharmacists to doctors to health administrators. I will attract them to come back in, some in partnership with us, some as something giving back to the state, and help us put a proper plan for a proper primary health care, the way UNDP proposed it. You know, there's an UNDP charter on primary health care in the whole world. We will implement it to the letter and have standard working primary health care centers. And at the same time, attract some of our experts to come home and run these places, either in their different capacities. You know, health center is not one thing. There are people, you need radiologists, you need different things. We already also know that we must equip at least one, because we have to also think about the funds. But within the first 1 year, we must get one general hospital, one good general hospital, be it FMC Owerri, which is where most people go today and say they went to a hospital. And I know that place is substandard. I'm saying this because this is true. I know. And we are saying we don't have to run it as a substandard hospital. We should have a very world-class, excellent general hospital, at least one in the state, functional, both in equipments and in facilities and in personnel, well run, because we have the people that get it done. Enumerate some of these are good medical doctors and nurses and practitioners to come back. And I know a whole lot of them are interested. That is how I want to do it. But all I was mentioning is that not everybody in the villages can come to that major hospital. We need those primary healthcare centers working, at least to give them what I would call first level attention before they think about going to the general hospital if they have to go. There is no reason why anybody in Imo State should be going to India for health or going to the United States. Fine, some of us have the opportunity to fly to all over these places, but think about the populace. I'm talking about the masses of the state. How many people can fly to India to go when they have a problem? You and I know that the percent that can do that is very low. So what happens to them? They should die? No, the answer is not.
Even if there are people who can afford it, or and who can do that, it should be something of a national shame that our people travel to other countries to get what we have the expertise for, and I was even going to come to that, because I see here most of our leaders from back home, coming down, almost coming down here to come and talk about what they want to do and all that. So I'm wondering, are we still under colonization? What are our leaders rushing here? How often do we see leaders from other countries coming to Nigeria to tell Nigerians what they want to do? So what is this about us rushing out, our leaders rushing out to belong in another community?
Well, I'm not sure I can answer for them. It's a shame. I agree with you. I share the same feelings with you. As you've seen, I'm right here in Nigeria. Yes, I had the opportunity to study overseas. I had the opportunity to work with the first-class corporation in the world, or IBM, but I have chosen to come home because I know I have the expertise, the exposure to be a great leader and to turn things around and change that trend you're talking about. Why can't we even have hospitals that other African people should say, I want to go to hospital, and it says, oh, I want to go to that general hospital in Owerri, in Imo State. It cannot, and that's what I intend to do, is to turn our state to be a destination for people from other parts of the world to come to.
Yeah. Talking of labor, recently we had a report about, Abia State expelling, workers, Imo State workers, Imo State indigents who were working in Abia State, like nurses, teachers. They were expelled to go back to their state, and they had to forfeit their pension and everything there. And some of them became stuck, and they don't know how to get back enrolled into Imo State. So I'm wondering, how is Imo State, and how, now let's say you are the governor of Imo State. If you become the governor of Imo State, how will you be able to, what are you going to do to make sure that the relationship between the Imo State are cordial, so that people can work anywhere they want to work within the eastern state?
Okay, well, those who know my story and my history, the only major organization that I've joined since I came back home in Lagos, where I live and work, is the Igbo group called Aki Kenga, which is the Igbo think tank group. And if you look at Igbo, that group is a pan-Igbo group that talk about what's good for the Igbos in the nation called Nigeria. So for me, I do not believe that we should not have a very solid cooperation as Igbos or as southeastern states. So this concept of thinking that because you are from Abia, you cannot work in Imo, and that, for me, it doesn't make sense. We can even hire people that are not even from the southeastern states. If you have a service to offer us as a state, and we believe you have what it takes, and you are an addition to us, we will employ you in Imo State. We are going to make Imo State our state, but it will be a state for every citizen. So for me, you are talking to somebody who knows that logic of thinking that is narrowly, or you are Abia, or you are Enugu State. No, I intend to be a galvanizing state, Imo, for the region, to become a regional corporation when you say southeastern region, and then extend it into the bigger picture, which is the nation, Nigeria, to cooperate, and because we need each other, and we can make each other happy by cooperating, working with each other. Nothing says that you cannot work in Imo State because you're not maybe born in Imo State. Okay. And people will see how that model works through what we will be doing, and they will appreciate it.
Okay. Now, in the past 5 years and ongoing, Anambra State, and just as you said earlier, has been lauded for their resourcefulness, their, both farming and all that. Apart from the national allocation of funds that are given to state, how else do you want to generate funds for the state and make it more viable financially?
Okay, in that area, it cuts across some of these key areas I told you. Remember, we've just talked about health. It's revenue. If you have good hospitals, people will come in and they will spend money. That's revenue to the state. So that's one. Now, remember, we talked about education. The truth is, if you produce great leaders through your educational system, they will become workforce for the state and for the rest of the country and for the rest of the region, West Africa, and even for the rest of the world. You are today operating in UK. You are a resource that came out of Imo State, and now you are there. And I know through your work there, you probably are touching some lives here in the state. So what I'm saying is, when you make a state very viable, then the revenue base of that state starts growing. Then you get your tax remunerations outside of what you get from the center based on the Nigerian system where we share money in the center. You need to increase your tax base. How do you increase your tax base? You do that by creating jobs. The more people you get into the employment of the state, be it civil service, be it on the private sector that I was talking about, because we are going to grow a very robust private sector. If I tell you today we have only 2 manufacturing companies in Imo State, would you believe it? It's a shame. Only Nigerian breweries and Coca-Cola manufacturing in that. We are going to rapidly increase that area by some of the programs and the policies we are going to put up as a state, so that we will attract a lot of Imo citizens and other Nigerian investors. Nothing says other investors from the country or outside the country. We will create a very amiable state for them, an environment very secure, because security is going to be a very critical area. We will tighten up our security so that people feel safe to come into the state to invest. When all these people come in, what it means is that our tax base will start growing up, what we call IGR, internally generated revenue of the state will go up, that we will begin to even depend less on the money out of the state. For instance, it will interest you to know that Imo State has the largest gas reserve in the country. You may not know this, because today everybody's talking only oil, oil, oil. Have you thought about what gas can bring into Imo State? We are the largest gas reserve. Go and check it out. And us and Abia. But our government doesn't understand what it means to go outside to international companies and create policies that will make them begin to say, let's go and invest into that gas sitting on your soil. When they come in, though, that's what they call direct investment, coming to the state. And when they create the companies that will be doing some of this gas exploration and selling them, that's money, even though it goes to federal, but some of that will come to the state. They will be paying tax in the state. So all that will increase our internally generated revenue. And all that money we'll start using to create the services that will make Imo citizens comfortable, paying the pensioners on time. We will even look at our salary base, because we know that well-enumerated employees are happy workers and they produce better. Because for me, what they're paying today is not good. So we will look at all that holistically and, then think about how to make some of our people outside who are thinking how to come back, but it's always been, what can we do when we come? How can they pay us and all that? And they will begin to see that coming to work in Imo State will be a joy. So that's how we intend to do that.
You mentioned the private sector, and I was listening carefully to see if you can mention some of the areas of those private sectors that you want to really enhance, apart from the big companies and inviting, making sure that investors, what of individual private people who want to, I don't want to mention, but I want to see if you're going to mention what I'm thinking, the areas of empowering the populace, the major, people of the state.
Okay. Now remember that okay, go on, sorry.
Apart from gas and hospitals and services and all that, what other area in the private sector are you going to look into that will directly help the people?
Okay. Now, because I have been very fortunate to have been in Lagos, which is the commercial nerve center of Nigeria, I have, doing my work, I've been in Nigeria. I came back into Lagos in 1996, and then as an expatriate working for IBM, I left in 1999 to South Africa, where I became director, but then I moved back to the US and resigned to come back home to continue. The truth is, I've taken time to know what is going on. I've had some good connections. For instance, a whole lot of Igbo businessmen are the ones powering a whole lot of manufacturing in Lagos. If you discuss with a whole lot of them, because of my involvement with Aki Kenga, they will tell you the reason they have their manufacturing and their distribution centers in Lagos is because the southeastern states do not give them good policies. The governments before now do not understand that it is your duty to go and attract these businessmen. It's like a relationship. You have to make them feel good to come to you, and you coming to them. So what I'm saying is, so many businesses, it's my job to compete. I don't want to open up all that kind of worm right now, but it's my duty to compete. Nothing says Dangote, who is the richest African man, cannot come to have one of his factories in Imo State. Those are things I will make sure I can make. I will make him happy and give him incentives, that the right incentives to make him want to site one of these factories or manufacturing facilities here. I'm using one local scenario of a Dangote who is already right there next door. Because Dangote doesn't care where he puts his manufacturing, as long as he makes money, as long as he's secure, as long as he gets certain things that he needs and skills, which we will be producing at the back end to feed into his operation. Now, it will interest you to know that many actors today, you hear Nollywood. It will interest you to know that most of the actors, very high percent of them, come from Imo State. And if you go beyond that Imo State, most of them come from southeastern state. It's predominantly dominated by the Igbos. Let me just round it up that way. Now, if you understand how Uguta Lake is situated, I already have a footprint and a plan, and with investors who told me they're interested at the right time, once they see good government, good governance, and they are comfortable that they pour in their money, that their money will be secure, because that's part of it. You don't put money where you don't know what happens in the next 2-3 years. You would like to think that there is a plan, a 4-year plan, an 8-year plan, and even beyond. What I'm saying is, we can make Imo the entertainment center, entertainment headquarters of West Africa, because we are already in the business. All we need is the government to create that enabling environment. I have that plan. And that will also create jobs and affect the youth, because a whole lot of them will be in that industry in one way or the other. Not necessarily that everybody will be an actor. There will be those who are cameramen. There will be those who will be distribution. I can go on and on. But all I'm saying is that and tourism will be on behind that, like you have in Disney World. Disney World. Yeah.
Okay. The area I was expecting, you to talk about, which has long been neglected and which serves majority of the people. In fact, almost everybody, benefits from it. For a long time, famine in our land has been, reduced to nothing, to the extent that, people can't, young people don't find it trendy anymore to farm. And you can agree with me that any society that cannot produce what they can eat from their own land, then are in trouble. So how are you going to make sure that farming comes back to becoming something attractive to the youth, to the people, so that people can actually take pride in farming? For example, when I was growing up, there used to be oranges everywhere. People have yam, people have, before you start talking of going to market to buy those other things, how are we going to make people begin to value those products that we produce from our own backyard? How are we going to add value to that, to farming again?
Okay, that's a good one. Maybe I didn't mention it when I was saying the key areas, when I mentioned health, education, and so on and so forth. Of course, agriculture is one key area. Coincidentally, by the way, my immediate younger brother had just retired as the director for FCT Agriculture. He's an agri-economist. Him and I have already discussed and a whole lot of things. Remember that the agriculture you and I knew about was sort of subsistence agriculture. We are now talking about agroeconomics, where you understand how to maximize whatever you're doing, whichever aspect of farming you take. And coincidentally, in the family is already an expert. We are already rolling out, which you'll probably see that when we roll it out as part of our incentives to our people, because we have checked out Imo State. One of the things we have is that we don't have big landscape, where you do large scale farming, but we have small parcels of lands And what we are understanding is that if you teach the people how to maximize what they farm, specialize it in the areas we have comparative advantage, which he has told me, and these are facts with statistics and studies, that Imo State has a comparative advantage over many other African states in palm oil and cassava. Now, we are going to take those two areas, but we will also expand. There are other areas of farming like piggery and fishery, but do them in a mechanized way and create the whole value chain system so that when these local people, let's say rural areas, produce, let's say their palm, they already know when they produce the palm, where the aggregator is, what they call aggregator, those who will collect all the palm. It's not that level you just carry and go to your local market. We're talking about you produce a value chain all the way to the distributors and the wholesalers who package these palms for those who will either do some refinery because they need it in their manufacturing area, or those that will export them. Complete value chain. This will be put together, train people who will join the industry in different areas and make it a very viable farming system. The cassava own, we have already started, even without being in government. My younger brother brought in 3 species of cassava. Would you know that today in the cassava they do in Imo State, it takes about 2 years to harvest. He has brought in the special species based on research. A lot of things have been done in Umudike, but when people don't have knowledge, a lot of the farming is done, as you said, we walked away from it, call it the oil or whatever that caused it. Most people that do farming is maybe the middle belt and the northerners. My younger brother has finished work in Abuja. We are bringing it into our state. He brought in, for instance, just use as an example, these 3 species we are distributing now to the rural area women to replace all their old cassavas. What does it do? One of the species, he has a name for it, takes only 6 months to harvest. So you've shortened the lifespan. You don't wait 2 years to get your produce. He also showed me the statistics. 1 tuber, it gives you yield, what they call production yield for each cassava. It's enough to give you, make it worth your while as a farmer, as opposed to the way it used to be. So that is on that side. We already have one of our associates and a guy dreaming like us who came out of UK, and we were all together in Lagos talking about what we want to do in Imo. He was a little bit in a haste even before me. He said, Steve, why are you planning for the governance? I'm already moving in. He took mortgage from his house in UK, and today he's already producing palm kernel oil. My younger brother helped to do consulting for him, how to talk about aggregators, so that
have we lost you? Okay. Hello, Dr. Steve, are you there? Hello? It looks like we've lost Dr. Steve. We're going to wait and see if he comes back, and then we'll carry on with the interview.